I wasn't planning to stop by Emily's house that day. I had just finished a long shift at the clinic. My feet were sore, my back ached, and all I wanted was a hot shower and a nap. But as I turned the corner toward home, I passed her street, and something just told me to stop. Maybe it was Sister's intuition, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was that little voice inside me that had been whispering for weeks. Something's wrong. Emily and I had always been close, or at least we used to be. Things changed after her divorce. She became more distant, more private. Still, I tried to check in on her when I could. That's what big sisters do. So, I turned the wheel and drove toward her house. But as I approached her gate, my heart dropped. Ryan's car was parked right outside. At first, I blinked, thinking maybe I was seeing things. But no. There it was. His license plate, his bumper sticker, his work badge still dangling from the rearview mirror. Why would Ryan be here? He told me he had a client meeting on the other side of town. In fact, he'd called me just an hour earlier to say he was swamped and wouldn't be home until late. But there was his car, right at my sister's house. My stomach twisted into a knot. I parked a few houses down and stepped out of my car, moving slowly, carefully. I told myself maybe he was just dropping something off. Maybe he was helping her fix something. Maybe... I crept toward the side of the house where the living room window faced the street. Her curtains were slightly open. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Their laughter. I froze, crouched under the window, afraid to even breathe too loudly. My heart was pounding so hard I was scared they might hear it from inside. Then I heard Emily's voice, clear as day. Claire has no idea. Honestly, I don't think she ever will. Followed by Ryan's chuckle. She's too trusting. That's why it's been so easy. Easy? Easy to what? I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. My hands were shaking. I pressed myself closer to the wall, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. I wanted to believe I was misunderstanding, that there was some other explanation. But then Emily spoke again. I almost feel bad. But you said it yourself. She's not exciting. She's comfortable. Comfortable. Like a pair of old shoes. I stared down at my fingers. I didn't even realize I was clutching the side of my shirt, twisting the fabric so tightly it hurt. I should have barged in right then. I should have yelled, screamed, thrown something, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, listening to the two people I trusted most, my husband and my own sister, laugh behind my back like I was some kind of joke. I don't know how long I stood there before I backed away. I moved like a ghost, drifting down the sidewalk and back to my car. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the dashboard, trying to blink away the sting in my eyes. My mind kept replaying Emily's voice. She has no idea. But now I did. And everything was about to change. Viewers, have you ever discovered a betrayal when you least expected it? Tell me in the comments how you would have reacted if you were in Claire's shoes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this emotional story. After that day at Emily's window, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with Ryan snoring softly beside me, and all I could think was, how long? How long had they been lying to me? How long had I been living with strangers? I kept rewinding everything in my head, trying to find the exact moment when it all started to go wrong. I didn't want to believe what I had heard. But when I looked back, the signs were there. Tiny things. Things I brushed off because I trusted them both so much. A few weeks ago, Ryan had come home late. Again. He said he was stuck in traffic. I remember teasing him, calling him Mr. Overtime, and handing him a plate of reheated dinner. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Thanks, babe, you're too good to me." But now I wonder if he was even in traffic at all. Then there was Emily. She'd been acting different lately, harder to reach, always canceling plans. When I invited her over for tea last month, she said she wasn't feeling well, but I remember something strange from that day. Ryan had gone out to run errands, and when he came back, he looked nervous. I even joked, "You look like you've seen a ghost." He laughed it off and kissed my cheek. Just tired. Now, that moment felt like a flashing red warning light I had missed. One evening, we all had dinner together. Just a small family meal at Mom's house. I remembered Emily barely touched her food. Ryan kept checking his phone. They didn't look at each other, but there was a weird tension in the air. At the time, I thought maybe Emily was still struggling with her divorce. She had married young, and when things fell apart, she moved back into our family home for a while. I tried to support her through all of it, let her cry on my shoulder, even helped her set up her new apartment. And Ryan, well, he always said he felt sorry for her. He even told me once, "I think she just needs someone to believe in her again." Now I know what he meant by that. I remember another moment, just 2 weeks ago. Emily came over unexpectedly. She said she was in the neighborhood and brought cookies. Ryan was home early that day, rare for him, and I caught them both sitting on the couch laughing. Nothing suspicious, but I felt something. It passed so quickly I told myself I was being paranoid. I had no reason not to trust them. Emily was my sister. Ryan was my husband. They were my family. But when I replayed those memories with fresh eyes, I started seeing things I didn't see before. The awkward glances, the long pauses, the quiet moments when I walked into the room and they suddenly went silent. How did I miss it? Was I really that blind? No, I wasn't blind. I was loyal. I believed in them. And they used that against me. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, watching Ryan sleep like everything was fine. His mouth was slightly open, his arms stretched across my pillow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to shake him awake and shout, "How could you?" But I didn't. I just sat there, thinking about all the things I gave. The dinners, the back rubs, the late-night talks when he said he was overwhelmed at work. I remembered comforting Emily through her tears when her marriage fell apart. I had held her hand and told her things would get better. And the whole time, they were doing this to me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just empty. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left only the shell. I thought I knew them, but I didn't know them at all. I could have stormed in that day. I could have kicked the door open, shouted their names, made a scene so loud the neighbors would have called the police. I could have exposed them right there and then. But I didn't. Instead, I walked away. Not because I was weak, but because I needed time to think. The kind of betrayal I heard through that window doesn't just break your heart, it shatters your sense of reality. You don't know where to put your pain. You don't know what's real anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't face them yet. I needed answers. Real ones. Not lies wrapped in sweet voices. I drove around the city for hours that night. No music, no destination. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of my thoughts pounding in my head. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. Ryan was already in bed. I stood in the hallway, looking at the back of his head as he lay sleeping. It was strange how normal everything looked, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The next morning, I got up early. I made coffee, smiled at Ryan, and asked him how his meeting had gone. He looked me straight in the eyes and said it was boring. "Just the usual reports and numbers," he said. Liar. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I smiled, handed him his travel mug, and kissed his cheek. My lips didn't even feel like they belonged to me anymore. That was the day I decided I needed proof. Not just what I heard at the window, real evidence. I had to know how long it had been going on, how deep it went, what kind of lies they were telling behind my back. So I started watching. Not in an obvious way. I played it cool. I became someone else. Someone silent, observant, patient. When Ryan left his phone on the nightstand one evening to take a shower, I picked it up and quickly took photos of some of his messages. Most were innocent, some were work-related. But one thread caught my eye. It was under a nickname I didn't recognize, ER. The messages were mostly deleted, but one was still there. She'll never see it coming. I almost feel guilty. Almost, the reply read. I didn't need to guess who ER was. That same week, I followed Emily one evening after she told Mom she was running errands. I stayed 2 cars behind. She didn't see me. She drove to a little motel on the edge of town and went inside. 10 minutes later, Ryan's car pulled up. I sat in my car, parked across the street, hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. There it was. I had my answer. A part of me still hoped this was some twisted misunderstanding. But no. This was real. Cold, raw, and disgusting. Over the next few days, I kept collecting what I could. Locations, screenshots, dates. I made copies. I stored things in a hidden folder on a USB drive and emailed it to myself just in case. And while I was doing all of this, I acted like the perfect wife. I packed Ryan's lunches. I helped Emily pick out curtains for her apartment. I smiled during family brunches. I laughed at their jokes. No one suspected a thing. But what hurt more than anything was discovering my mother had sensed something too. One afternoon, she called me to check in. Her voice sounded uneasy. Claire, she said gently, has Ryan been different lately? I asked her what she meant. She hesitated. I don't want to worry you, but sometimes I get the feeling that Emily is getting too close to him. I went still. Why would you think that? I asked. She didn't have a clear answer. Just a feeling. A mother's instinct, she said. But she hadn't told me before. She had kept it to herself. I hung up the phone, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried harder than I've ever cried in my life. Not because I was sad, but because I felt stupid. Stupid for trusting them, for loving them, for not seeing it sooner. Still, I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Because I wasn't just going to get mad, I was going to get smart. They thought I'd never find out. They thought I'd keep smiling, keep cooking dinner, keep playing the loving wife and devoted sister. No questions asked. They thought I was weak. But they didn't know me at all. After everything I had uncovered, I knew one thing for sure. If I wanted to get out of this mess with my dignity and peace intact, I couldn't act out of rage. I had to be smart, calm, quiet. I had to make every move count. So, I didn't yell. I didn't cry in front of them. I kept playing the part. At home, I folded Ryan's laundry, made his favorite meals, even laughed at his tired little jokes. He didn't notice the way I watched him, the way my eyes followed every move, memorizing his routine. He had no idea I was already several steps ahead. Behind the scenes, I began preparing for the storm. The first thing I did was meet with a lawyer. A quiet, serious woman named Jenna, who listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. The affair, the motel visits, the text messages, the betrayal. She nodded slowly and said, Claire, you've got more control here than you realize. And she was right. Together, we made a plan. I started separating myself financially from Ryan, quietly. I removed my name from the joint savings account we rarely used, moved my paychecks to a new personal account, and updated the deed on a small rental property my father had left me years ago, one Ryan didn't even know was in my name. I had spent so many years taking care of Ryan and Emily, making sure they were okay. Now, I was taking care of myself. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about control. It was about finally owning the fact that I deserved better. One day, as I walked into the kitchen, Ryan looked up from his laptop and said, Hey babe, I was thinking, maybe we should invite Emily over this weekend. You know, cheer her up. Cheer her up? I smiled. Sure, that sounds nice. He had no idea I had already seen the texts he deleted. No idea I had tracked his car to that motel twice last week. No idea that I had enough evidence to break him in court, and still I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't done watching them squirm in my silence. Then, a few days later, I found out something that knocked the breath out of me. Emily was pregnant. I heard it through Mom. She called, full of cautious excitement, saying, "Emily didn't want to tell anyone yet, but she's expecting." I dropped the dish I was washing. It shattered against the sink. Pregnant? With Ryan's child? I didn't need a paternity test to know. My sister hadn't dated anyone else in over a year. I had followed her, watched her, gathered every detail of her life for the past several weeks. There was no one else. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, staring out the window. I thought of all the times I'd dreamed of having a family of my own. Ryan always said, "one day," that we were too busy now, that it wasn't the right time. I believed him. I waited. I tried to understand. But now I saw the truth. He hadn't wanted a family with me. He had wanted her. Or maybe he didn't want anything at all. Just the thrill of the lie. The control. The game. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling strangely calm. This wasn't the part where I broke. This was the part where I built. I thought about the family dinners, the fake smiles, the quiet betrayal unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. I thought about the baby growing inside my sister, a symbol of everything they thought they got away with. They thought I was too nice, too gentle, too naive to do anything about it. But they forgot something. I loved quietly, but I also planned quietly. And this time I wasn't going to just walk away. I was going to choose the moment to speak. And when I did, the silence would end. My birthday arrived like a quiet storm. I knew they were planning something. Ryan had been whispering on the phone, sneaking off to text, pretending to be casual. My mother had asked me twice if I was free that evening. And Emily? She sent me a cheery, "Happy birthday, big sis" message first thing in the morning with way too many heart emojis. The whole thing felt rehearsed. They were setting a stage. I just didn't know what the act would be until I got to the dinner. It was at my mom's house. Balloons, streamers, a cake with my name on it. Family gathered around the table, trying to look excited. Ryan stood behind me, resting his hand on my shoulder. I could feel the tension in his grip. I smiled and played along, like I hadn't been building an escape plan for weeks. Dinner was almost over when Emily stood up. She tapped her glass with her fork and cleared her throat. "I have an announcement," she said, placing one hand on her stomach. I already knew what she was going to say, but I let her speak. "I'm pregnant," she said, her eyes flicking toward Ryan. The room fell silent. Someone gasped. My aunt dropped her fork. Emily smiled and added, "I know this isn't how we expected things to go, but life surprises you. We're a family now." She didn't even look at me. Like I didn't exist. Like this was her moment. Ryan didn't say a word. He just stood there behind me, frozen, as if he couldn't believe she'd actually said it out loud. I picked up my wine glass and stood slowly. "Congratulations," I said calmly. "To both of you." Emily blinked, startled. Ryan's mouth opened, but no words came out. "I actually have something for you, too," I said, turning to Emily. "A little gift." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small envelope. Emily hesitated, then took it from my hand and opened it. Inside was a printed report. Her smile dropped the moment she saw it. It was a DNA test result. I had mailed in Ryan's DNA, collected from his toothbrush weeks earlier, and paired it with a napkin Emily had used during brunch. I didn't need it for legal reasons. I just needed confirmation. And what it confirmed was simple. Ryan couldn't be the father. 2 years ago, he'd had a vasectomy, something he never told Emily. Everyone at the table was watching us now, confused. Ryan stepped forward. "Claire, what is this?" I turned to face him, still holding my glass. "I told you we weren't ready for children, and you agreed. Then you went behind my back and gave that dream to someone else. Or so you thought." He paled, Wait. I spoke to your doctor, I said softly. Remember? I made your appointment. I picked up your meds. You think I didn't know? Emily looked like she'd been slapped. She stared at the paper, trembling. I turned back to the table. I'd like to make a toast, I said, raising my glass. To betrayal, to liars, and to the best birthday gift I've ever received, the truth. Then I set down my glass and reached into my purse one more time. This time I pulled out another envelope. It was addressed to Ryan. Inside was a letter from my lawyer, outlining the sale of the house he lived in, which was in my name. The accounts? Closed. The car? Reclaimed. The man standing next to Emily had nothing now. He looked down at the letter like it had been written in a foreign language. You think I didn't know what you were doing? I asked, voice steady. I knew. I knew for a long time. And now everyone else knows too. I turned, looked Emily in the eye, and smiled. You wanted to take my life? Fine. But just know, you'll be raising someone else's baby alone, with nothing but the ashes you thought were gold. And just like that, I picked up my purse and walked out. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Because for the first time in months, I felt free. It's funny what people think winning looks like. Emily thought she'd won. She thought stealing my husband and announcing her pregnancy at my birthday dinner would break me. She thought her little performance would make her the center of attention, the new star of the family. And Ryan? He just stood there like a deer in headlights, realizing too late that the rug had already been pulled out from under him. But what neither of them realized was, I had already moved on. Not from the pain, not from the betrayal, but from them. I gave myself the gift of freedom that night, and after I walked out of that house, I never looked back. A few days later, the fallout started. Ryan tried calling me, over and over and over. He sent texts, left voicemails, even showed up at my work once with that same fake apologetic look I used to fall for. I didn't know she was going to say it like that, he said. Like that was the problem. I made a mistake, he pleaded. Can't we talk? Talk? I didn't owe him a word. The house was no longer his. I had sold it the day after my birthday. It had always been in my name. The paperwork was signed. The new owners were moving in within the week. The joint accounts? Closed. His credit card access? Revoked. I had legally protected every asset I'd earned, every dollar I was entitled to. He was left with a suitcase, a rented room, and a reputation in flames. Emily, on the other hand, didn't take it so well. She tried calling too, once. But she didn't leave a voicemail. I think part of her still believed I'd come running to forgive her, that I'd be the big sister again, the helper, the fixer. But I was done fixing other people's messes. Instead, I sent her something, a manila envelope, with her name on it. Inside was a legal notice. During the final weeks of my marriage, I'd quietly had one of my rental properties transferred into Emily's name. She thought I was helping her, offering her a new place to live after her rough patch. What she didn't know was I was setting her up to take the fall. Because that property, it had been linked to our joint marital assets through an investment Ryan tried to hide. And since she accepted it under false pretenses, using funds taken from my household, she was now being sued for emotional damages and theft of marital assets. I didn't want her money. I wanted her to feel what I felt, used, powerless, humiliated. She didn't show up to the first hearing. Her lawyer tried to negotiate. I stayed calm. I asked for nothing more than what was fair, just enough to legally attach her name to the financial chaos she helped create. And the baby? Well, that was the real twist. I never said anything after I handed her that DNA result. But word got around. Quietly, rumors started. People whispered. Family members talked. Emily refused to admit anything. But Ryan, he eventually demanded a test. And when the truth came back, that he wasn't the father, they turned on each other faster than I could have imagined. Ryan moved out. Emily stopped showing up at family events. Mom tried to stay neutral, but even she couldn't pretend not to see it anymore. The perfect little fantasy they built, it crumbled. And me? I traveled. I redecorated a small apartment by the lake and made it mine. I read books again. I went to dinner alone without feeling lonely. I even started volunteering at a shelter for women going through divorces. Women like me. Women who gave everything and got nothing in return until they took their power back. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't destroy. I reclaimed. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about ruining someone's life. It's about watching them ruin it themselves after you walk away with your peace, your dignity, and your name untouched. Emily took my husband, so I took her illusion, and I never looked back.